Okay, cool. So let's say you want to make a wrist joint for your ball jointed doll. You can either make one using a sphere, it's really easy, or you can download mine. I have one listed for free on my cults. So I'll be linking that in the comments or the description or wherever. But here's going to be an example of a magnetic wrist joint. I really like magnetic wrist joints for like if your hand is really big and cartoony, you can pop the hand off and then pop it on after you get the clothes on so you don't have to like disassemble the whole doll. So when you're making one, you need to decide what size magnets you want. My dolls I designed tend to be 28 centimeters tall, so I try to use a magnet that, works for that kind of scale. And in my case, I picked a 6mm by 2mm magnet, and I chose that size based on what was available on Amazon. I also went into Tinkercad and just made the object and then kind of put it next to my 3D model and was like, okay, cool, that fits. So generally when you make a wrist, it's just a sphere with a little U cut into it right here, and then a little peg. And trying to figure out what size the peg needs to be so that it's strong enough to not snap, but small enough for your S-hook to fit on can be kind of tedious. That's kind of why I like to just provide my file, because this one works just fine for my doll. You can size it up, you can size it down. I haven't had any issues with it breaking. If your wrist bar does break, which is this piece, you can also just remove this entirely, drill into this, and use some kind of metal pin, like a screw or some type of really dense wire. That also works. But anyway, this is my example of a finished wrist joint that has a magnet well. Really all you need is your round wrist part, and then you just add a little fun little donut to the end, and there you go. So my donut fits a 6mm by 2mm magnet. Now, if you want to use mine, you can do that. Let's say we have a hand that we're making. I'm gonna make a really awful hand here for you. And I use ZBrush Core. You can try ZBrush Core Mini. I know that is their free version. You can also make something in Blender. I know Blender has the same actions that I'm going to be using in ZBrush. I just don't really know where it is in the options. But you're going to be using what's called a Boolean deformer or Boolean cutter. So let's pretend that this is the most amazing hand in the world. It's got 4 cute cartoony fingers, the most perfect palm in all of the lands. Perfect. This is the most amazing hand. Okay, let's say you made your beautiful, wonderful hand and you want it to work with my magnetic wrist guy, because then you don't have to do as much work. Why work harder when you can work smarter and have more fun? So here's my hand that I made. And then here is my wrist. So I'm going to just, size my hand about right here where I want it. Perfect. So now if I get my hand to connect to this, I'll be able to pop my hand off and stick it on with a magnet. I've already designed a cutter object for you as well. So what you're going to do is import my object that's called the wrist cutter. It's basically the same thing as the wrist. It's just a little bit bigger, and it has this extra little nub on it. This is to cut an area for another 6mm by 2mm magnet, because you're going to have 2 magnets. You're going to have one inside here. You're going to have a magnet in here that's going to go inside your wrist object. Not that one. This one. You're going to have a magnet in here. And then you're going to have a magnet inside your hand, like this. So that's why this little cutter guy has this extra nub right here. It's so that it has extra space for a magnet. And literally all you're going to do is take that fun cutter object, put your hand next to it where you want it. You can clean it up and such. And you're going to use this as a cutting object. In ZBrush Core, we do this by going to geometry and turning it into a Dynamesh. I'm going to change it to this little cutaway icon. This looks like a little crescent moon. And I'm going to make sure that my hand is also a Dynamesh. And just in case we mess up, I like to duplicate those. So, because when you do a Boolean action, it's an undoable action. So we have extra copies. Make sure that your hand has the 2 solid circles and your cutter has the crescent moon circle. You're going to click on your hand object to make that your active layer. Now you're going to go down to merge and click merge down. Now those objects are merged down together if you look on your layers panel or your subtool panel. Now what you want to do is click, you can either hold Control Out in this area and drag, or you can click your Dynamesh button under the geometry. And now it's cut a little hole. And you see that there's a little bit of an extra right here. We'll get rid of that by masking it off. Split masked points. There we go, we got rid of that. But now this is ready to use. That's all it is. You just use the cutter object and bam. You don't have to worry about what magnet size you're using because it's already sized. You don't have to make anything. You just cut your object with my object and bam, it works. Now you can scale this wrist cutter up to fit your object as well. Just make sure that when you do, you keep in mind that you'll be changing the size of the magnet wheel as well. So you may need a larger magnet or a smaller magnet. But now we have this, and it's done. And we already had the wrist joint that I finished and provided for free to download. So now you have a perfect little hand, and you can pop him off to put the clothes on, and then when you're done, you can go, and there you go. Hooray! Hooray! You did it. Now be gay and do crime as long as it's legal. Have fun, support artists, and be real neat.